Hello, everyone, and welcome to What's the News. So, we've still been like ping ponging back and forth between this are we attacking Iran or are we not attacking Iran business, while chaos itself is blossoming throughout the United States. It feels an awful lot like 2020. This time it's closer to the midterms, though, because Daddy Trump can't run again. However, I think that we would be remiss to assume that the chaos may not continue until the presidential election cycle. Anyways, as usual, please give us feedback, leave comments, and please share with your community. So let's dive in. In New York, in Brooklyn, Crown Heights, more specifically at 770, a car rammed into a building. Now, for those of you who may not know what 770 is, it's the headquarters of Chabad, which is one of the largest global Jewish institutions. This past week was also a critical time because it marks Yud Shavat, which is a holiday that also happens to be the anniversary of the Rebbe taking his place as the leader of Chabad. So a lot of people were in the area to participate in activities for this commemoration. A gentleman, mid 30s, repeatedly drove his car into the doors of the building. The driver allegedly told people to move out of the way before he proceeded to drive his car into the doors multiple times. Fortunately, no one was hurt during the incident. The NYPD was called and they did deploy a bomb squad to check the car, and no explosive devices were found. This is currently being investigated as a hate crime. Also in New York, the weather reached lows of 20 below zero, and that caused the Long Island Aquarium to move a group of 20 penguins inside. Now, you might be asking, don't penguins naturally live in frigid weather? I thought so too. And then it was revealed that the penguins are from South Africa. And then I remembered the Disney movie with the penguins on the beach, Surf's Up. Apparently, most penguins are not adapted to cold weather. So I guess this isn't really news. There was a flight headed to New York from Tel Aviv. However, due to the winter storm, the flight was diverted to Minneapolis. One of the local Chabad rabbis was notified and organized volunteers to prepare meals for 300 stranded travelers. The volunteers cooked for around 6 hours and delivered the food to the airport as well as nearby hotels. Now, in Florida, on February 6th, you will now have to speak English in order to be able to legally drive a vehicle. The Florida Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles announced that the driver's license skill test will now only be administered in English, and there will be no interpreters. This comes as federal actions have been taken to sideline commercial drivers for failing English proficiency requirements. In addition to the fact that there was a high-profile fatal crash in Florida, the gentleman that was driving the vehicle was not only inefficient in the English language, he was also an illegal immigrant. He entered illegally through Mexico in 2018, which, in my opinion, raises several other questions because the guy has 3 other prior traffic violations, all before the incident where he committed the vehicular manslaughter of 3 individuals. Somehow, after entering the country illegally, he managed to allegedly receive a worker's permit. It's not only that the guy couldn't speak competent English, he supposedly also is unable to read road signs. I can't be the only one thinking it's nuts that this person, first of all, wasn't deported after the first few infractions in California and New Mexico. Second of all, how can he have a license when he doesn't even know what's going on the roads? It makes absolutely no sense. The Trump administration is considering pulling funding from California, New Mexico, and Washington state for their failure to enforce English language requirements for truckers. Now, I believe that there can be a valid argument that one doesn't need to necessarily speak perfect English to be able to drive. However, you should at least understand the basic words on the signs that are riddled throughout the country, on top of the fact that this person happens to be from a country where driving tends to be erratic and laws around driving are quite loose. Clearly, there were many oversights in this particular situation. So, last week we discussed a few cases related to ICE. One case in particular, though, we didn't cover, and it is a story that's been seemingly buried. In Georgia, an illegal immigrant unlawfully entered a home, held two girls, 10 years of age and 11, at knife point. He then proceeded to rape the girl aged 11 while her 10-year-old sister was in the room witnessing the event. Investigators say that he admitted having seen the girl before and that he was attracted to her. He's currently being held on 10 charges and he will not be deported before being tried. Three members of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, in other words, the IRGC, illegally entered the US in 2024. They have now officially been deported. In Minneapolis, at a town hall meeting, a gentleman in a black jacket rushed Ilhan Omar and sprayed her with an unknown substance. She was not visibly injured, and she was able to continue the meeting after the incident. Forensic scientists aren't quite sure what the substance was at the moment. The gentleman was arrested and charged with third-degree assault. Listen. It doesn't matter if you like someone or you don't like someone. It doesn't give you the right to physically assault or attack them. Use your words, people. And if you don't know what words to use, find a dictionary, read a book, use ChatGPT. But you do not have the right to attack someone just because you do not like them. If you don't like tomatoes, you don't walk into the grocery store and start stabbing tomatoes. What's wrong with you? And of course, Daddy Trump had something to say about the situation. A reporter was speaking with him, and he said that he hadn't seen the video, and it's reported that he said, "She probably had herself sprayed, knowing her." He can help himself. He just chooses not to. My grandmother loved to say, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. Costco is being sued because of their $5 rotisserie chickens. Two California shoppers filed a class action lawsuit accusing Costco of falsely claiming that their chickens contain no preservatives. However, the chickens have sodium phosphate and carrageenan in them. The shoppers allege that in-store signs and information on the website claims that the Costco chickens don't have preservatives. However, the ingredients list does have the two previously mentioned ingredients. Technically, according to US food regulators, these ingredients are allowed. And it would be great if we could trust food regulators in this country. However, Red 40 is still allowed in food, among other toxic ingredients. So food regulators are not arguably that reliable. Now, I don't eat the Costco chickens. However, I have other issues with them. They used to be encased in those like larger Tupperware chicken holders, and now they're placed in these flimsy plastic bags. Why is it problematic? Because at high heat, microparticles of plastic separate from the bags. Hot food is porous. So where do you think all of those plastic microparticles are going? Into the chicken. And you eat the chicken, and you are what you eat. And you might say, well, it's just one chicken, but you don't just get one Costco chicken once in a blue moon. It's a common meal staple in many households. And what does plastic do to your body? It causes hormonal damage, both for testosterone and estrogen. It causes oxidative stress in your body, has negative effects on blood vessels, and some plastics are carcinogens, and many have negative effects on the microbiome of the gut. I know I don't look like a hippie, but no one ever got anywhere judging covers. There was a 59-car pileup in California on Route 99. The pileup was on both the northbound and the southbound sides of the road. Around 10 people were taken to the hospital for injuries, and no deaths have been reported so far. Investigators believe that the heavy fog triggered the chain of accidents. We're wishing a speedy recovery to those involved. In Texas, an investigation is being launched regarding an alleged H-1B visa fraud. This specific visa allows U.S. employers to hire skilled foreign workers. This visa in particular has received a lot of attention because it's argued that it takes away jobs from equally qualified American citizens. The Attorney General's office has officially requested records and documentation from 3 businesses so far. Now, some people might argue that it's harsh and that foreign workers should be allowed if someone passes their interview. And if you think this is harsh, I implore you to check out enforcement of Patriot employment laws in Bermuda. It is reported that American seniors will receive a $6,000 tax exemption. This tax break is temporary from the 2025 to the 2028 tax years, and it's for people aged 65 and up, and only seniors with certain income limits are eligible for the full $6,000 exemption. Now, I hear this and think how wonderful for people who have likely worked the majority of their lives and now may be less capable of working. Thank God that there are some efforts to help people at this stage in their lives. However, other people have reacted with a clear lack of decorum. I'm going to read you some feedback from people. So, seniors get a $6,000 exemption. Meanwhile, a one-income family with kids gets nothing new. No stay-at-home parent credit, no larger family relief. Just a reminder that working families apparently means retirees. And another, absolutely disgusting. We do not need any more subsidies for the old. Try giving anything at all to people trying to start families. And this one takes the cake. What about the young families with children? Why are all the tax cuts for the elderly and the subsidies are for elderly's health care? Meanwhile, young people can't buy homes or afford families. People are so disconnected from social interaction and have lost any sort of care or concern for anyone outside of themselves. Does no one have a grandma or a grandpa? No one has an old Aunt Carol who used to sneak you ice cream before dinner? First of all, comparison is the thief of all joy. Why are you, a fully capable, well bodied person, probably with the physical capacity to do most jobs, upset with an aged, probably not so capable person who has likely been working the last 40 years? Do you lack sense or humanity? The Trump administration has moved to shut down a long-standing Medicaid financing loophole that allowed states to shift billions of dollars in costs onto taxpayers. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services said that some states have been setting higher taxes on providers and care plans that pulled in extra federal funding, which then created larger federal taxes. Dr. Oz, who is the CMS administrator, says that this rule helps to restore balance and bring fairness and ensures that funds will actually go to vulnerable beneficiaries. The agency estimates that the loophole currently generates $24 billion annually. That would provide significant relief to a significant amount of people. Moving along, in Barcelona, a Chinese businessman was arrested for funding Hamas through his beauty salon. He's been accused of sending around $700,000 worth of crypto for use in terror operations. This case actually began in June 2025 as a part of a separate probe into alleged fraud and money laundering. The investigators flagged the crypto activity and escalated the case to a terrorism financing investigation. It's not yet known if this happened due to ideological radicalization. In France, there is continued and growing support for legislation to ban children under 15 years of age from using social media. President Emmanuel Macron believes that social media is one factor that has caused violence among young people. He's hoping that France will follow Australia, who first banned children under 16 on social media platforms, including Facebook, Snapchat, TikTok, and YouTube, starting in December. This legislation also extends to an existing ban on smartphones in junior and middle schools and also high schools. I wonder how this would be received here in the States. A mayor in a small town in the Philippines survived an assassination attempt with a bazooka. This area is known to have political conflict. Two men emerged from a vehicle. One was firing an automatic rifle, and the other fired a rocket launcher. The mayor's armored Land Cruiser was engulfed in smoke for a short time before fleeing the scene. Fortunately, the mayor was unharmed. However, two of his security guards did have minor injuries. Now we move to Australia, where the Bondi Beach horror is still fresh in our minds. A woman who was shot simply for being a Jew had a gunshot wound to her head and was rushed to the hospital. When she arrived, her wristband with her Jewish name was removed and replaced with a wristband calling her Karen Jones. The hospital staff and medical professionals at the hospital where she was taken were not trusted enough to treat her because she was Jewish. This all comes after videos have been released of nurses and doctors explicitly stating that if someone were Jewish or Israeli, they would definitely be unsafe, likely be hurt, and possibly killed. And all along, we've been afraid of the giant spiders and poisonous creatures crawling over Australia. So, what's going on in Iran now? We still haven't attacked. However, things have not particularly de escalated. Trump is still moving U.S. military infrastructure to the Middle East. He also issued a new threat of major destruction. It's reported that the deal that Trump has offered Iran not only includes abandoning the nuclear program and abandoning any uranium, reducing its ballistic missile production capabilities, stopping support for the terror proxies, but also that they should recognize Israel as a state. Obviously, Iran wasn't going to be open to the first three, but definitely they're not going to recognize Israel. So one might ask, why present a potential deal that we know Iran will reject? Iran has allegedly deployed 1,000 drones due to Trump's threats. And if we're tracking, we know that Iran is great at talking the talk. Could it be true? Possibly. However, even if it is, Iran's power pales in comparison to the US and Israel. Saudi Arabia and other Arab nations have declared that they will not allow their airspace to be used to attack Iran. If we remember, they said the same thing prior to the 12-day war in June. And they may not have allowed their airspace for attacks on Iran, but they surely did shoot down missiles headed from Iran towards Israel. It's probably likely to happen again. The Saudi defense minister also stated that if now the US chooses to back down after all of these threats on Iran, the regime in Iran would likely feel emboldened. The Iranian crowned prince said that he believes that Trump is a man of his word and that an attack would hasten the fall of the regime. Now, this guy seemingly just popped up out of nowhere about a month ago. But was it a random pop up? Do we really think that all of this was happening and no one thought to think of the day after plan? Do we really think that the crowned prince just happened to start taking interviews? They're shooting things at you from opposite directions, hoping you will get confused and not keep up. The biggest mistake that people make is allowing literally anything to remove you from your center. Two explosions occurred in Iran. One was the site of an IRGC naval base near the Strait of Hormuz, and the other, an industrial center near the border with Iraq. Why the Strait of Hormuz? Because it's one of the world's busiest shipping routes, and Iran wanted to conduct a live fire exercise. Why the border with Iraq? Because Iraq will rush in to support Iran should any attack happen or a war start. So we can believe that it's coincidental, but we all know that Israel has people in all of the places that you can't imagine. And we would also be remiss to not believe that the US doesn't also have people in places that we could never think of. However, Israel has declared no connection to the explosions in Iran. So, what's going on in Israel? First of all, the best news coming out of Israel this last week was that the body of the last hostage, Ron Quili, was finally discovered. Outside of the war itself, this was not an easy task. The unit tasked with searching for Ron had to dig up 249 bodies. Not only dig them up, but they also had to do forensic testing on each body. Obviously, you might say, well, this is their job. But can you imagine the will and the hope and pure determination it takes to go through 249 bodies and finally the 250th body was Ron? Services were held and he was finally laid to rest. The Haredi conscription bill has advanced and will soon have its first vote held in the Knesset. The criticism of this bill is that it fails to actually enforce the draft. Many believe due to the fact that it's to appease the Haredi in the Knesset. We'll see. Either way, the Haredi enlistment is increasing. The Families of Fallen Soldiers Law has been amended to expand recognition, financial assistance, and long term support for widows, orphans, and bereaved family members of fallen soldiers and security soldiers. Recognition now includes adult orphans up to age 30 and retroactively affects adult orphans aged 21 to 30. The law also allows for more financial, social, and rehabilitation measures, which include monthly compensation for widows and adult orphans, childcare assistance, housing and marriage grants, and long term rehabilitation support. This law has been championed by the IDF Widows and Orphans Organization. Kol hakavod for seeing this through. Two Israelis set fire to two buildings belonging to a Bedouin village located northeast of Jerusalem. The IDF and border police were called to the scene. However, no suspects were arrested at the time. This Bedouin village is not unfamiliar with attacks. There have been numerous attacks in the last several months. Outside of Jerusalem, border police identified a suspect approaching a checkpoint. During their security check, he pulled a knife on the officers. The police opened fire and neutralized him. There also have been many counterterrorism operations in the area, and the security forces will continue doing their job and preventing and thwarting terror. The IDF and Israeli police had to disperse multiple clashes in Hebron after reports of a group of Palestinians attacking an Israeli and stealing some of his flock and his personal belongings. The Israeli and 3 Palestinians were evacuated for medical treatment, and additional confrontations erupted when several other Israeli citizens arrived to a nearby area. As the crowd was being dispersed, a female IDF officer was assaulted by a Palestinian woman and sustained facial injuries. Two Palestinian women suspected of involvement were detained and transferred to Israeli police for investigation. While in the area, the IDF also shot and killed a terrorist who threw a Molotov cocktail at them. Israeli soccer star Ty Abed was approached with a multi-million-dollar deal to play for the Emirati Pro League. In order to take the deal, he would have had to give up his eligibility to play for Israel. His response to this was, "I'm Israeli first, so no amount of money can ever buy me. I refuse to give up on the Israeli national team. My country is my pride, and representing it is the greatest thing, especially at this time. No one will take away my dream to lead my homeland to a major tournament." Wow, it's such an honorable thing to say. It's so amazing to witness people publicly standing tall in their principles, especially now when it's something that isn't particularly common. Ty ended up signing with Levante, joining Spain's top league. That's all we have for you for this week. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one.